You are Locked On Bulls Postcast, part of Locked On Sports Chicago on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Bulls Postcast here on the Locked On Sports Chicago YouTube channel. My name is Joe George. You can find me on Twitter at JoeGeorge92, on Instagram and TikTok at Joe George Radio. The Chicago Bulls win 125-113 over the Atlanta Hawks. They end their 4-game losing streak. They win their first game of November this season. So they move back to 4-6 on the season. The Cardiac Bulls. That's what this team is. They are the Cardiac Bulls. We've deemed them that. Stacey King has deemed them that. That's who they are this season. They're going to get down a bunch of points. They're not going to stop fighting, and they're going to win some basketball games in dramatic fashion. But a big win for the Bulls in this one, and really impressive in what they did in this game. And really in that final, I would say, 10 and a half minutes of the fourth quarter and what this team did. And we'll get into that here to start the show. We'll talk about the two different defenses we saw, really the first half and the second half in this game. Two totally different teams on the defensive side of the court, and we'll take a look at Zach LaVine's return. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube if you haven't done so yet here on Locked On Sports Chicago. And reminder, we're doing every single Bulls, Notre Dame, Bears, and eventually Cubs game when baseball season gets back around. So let's talk about this final stretch of basketball that we saw from the Chicago Bulls really in that last 10 and a half minutes, because there's really almost like two basketball games to talk about on the show today. What happened until the fourth quarter and the second half largely, and what happened in the first half. But the final 10 and a half minutes, Jalen Smith gets it to 6 points. Patrick Williams immediately gets it to 4. Kobe White immediately gets the and one, gets it to 101-100 with about 9 minutes left to go in the game. With 9 minutes, there's 9:01 left to go in the game. So right all of a sudden, it's a 1-point game. You're down by 18 points in this game. They get it back down to 1 in the fourth quarter, and kind of what we saw in some of these games this season that immediately pops back into your mind was that the Bulls are having success. They're getting the ball back down the court. They're getting these leads back down to very minimum or even taking the lead themselves. And then how do they answer it? How do they continue this game? Well, what we saw was a lot of very, very good things from the Chicago Bulls. We see a nice hustle play from Josh Giddey that ends up being an offensive rebound, then the dish to Jalen Smith to give the Bulls the lead. Patrick Williams hits a bucket that ended up giving the Bulls a 12-0 run to give them the lead to 104-101. So right then, that's when the Bulls get their first lead. I think it was when it was 102-101, they got their first lead of the game. So it's 104-101 after this 12-point run, and then with 7 minutes left, I'm waiting to see what is Billy Donovan's decision about when he's going to bring in Nikola Vucevic and Zach LaVine. When are they going to get back on the court? And they get back on the court with 7 minutes left to go. That's really when it felt like in that moment the game was totally over because the Bulls really just ran away with it there. They ended up with 8 guys in this game in double figures, which is a huge accomplishment. Like the way that they were sharing the basketball was a really positive thing from this game. Like that's the takeaway is you have a ton of guys that can score. Nikola Vucevic, another good game. Zach LaVine, really positive in his game back, returning from injury. And that's why the last couple games without LaVine, it's hard to, what do you want to take away from them? Because your best player, one of your two best players is not on the court. And I have felt comfortable so far, if you've been listening to the show, if you haven't, thanks for checking us out, that Nikola Vucevic has been by far the best player on the Chicago Bulls this season. This stat right here kind of proves it in this game. Nikola Vucevic tonight became the first Bulls player since 1978, Artis Gilmore, in the 78-79 season to score 200 points and have 100 rebounds in his first 10 games. So he's been money this season. But after you get that lead and Vooch and LaVine come back in, you see this team they're going on runs. They're playing great defense. I mean, in this game, in the fourth quarter alone, they go on 2 major runs. And that's how the Bulls won this game. They get the 12-0 run, which we talked about, which Patrick Williams got that 12th point, the 11th and 12th point, to make it 104-101, but they end the game on a 117-6 run. Now, you're getting a lot of gifts, I think, when you're watching the Atlanta Hawks. Like, this is the reason why this is another bad basketball team that you are seeing in this game with the Atlanta Hawks. But Trae Young, he's such a you take it or leave it kind of guy. For a lot of guys, a lot of people that watch the NBA, he's kind of a leave it for me when I watch him play, and it's because of what we saw in the fourth quarter. That as the Hawks are trying to maintain this deficit and trying to claw back in against the Bulls and try to mount their own comeback, he's just jacking up these threes that in the first half were going in, but in the second half really just were not for him. So that final 10.5 minutes is what Bulls basketball can be. And that's why this is another game where it's just, it really is like cardiac and frustrating are going to be the words, and apparently comebacks are going to be the words of the season so far for the Bulls, because it's just a frustrating basketball game for a majority of it. And then you see the second half where they just play so much better defense. And then in this fourth quarter, the offense really gets going in a big way. And they just find a way to get the win and to beat the Atlanta Hawks. Look, that's not a good basketball team, but when you're on a 4-game losing streak, you need your players to be clutch. You need your players to come through and not let this thing totally collapse. And, for the Bulls, the question kind of becomes, as the season will grow, is who are you going to be? And what I really like about this game is that after you give up 45 points in the fourth quarter to the Dallas Mavericks, after you give up 70 points in the first half of this game against the Atlanta Hawks, they just don't stop. Like the one thing you can't give the Bulls is they're not a team that quits at all. And we just saw that really become a very clear thing again for the Bulls. So I give them a lot of credit where, again, we're not seeing the starters doing these runs. Something that I think is, I don't know if it means something, but in these big comebacks that they keep having, it is the bench unit that is largely on the court getting them closer. And then your starters are coming in and they're either extending it like they did tonight or they're finishing the job. But it is something that your starters seem to be the ones that are, maybe the most guilty of these slow starts. Not maybe, they are the most guilty of these slow starts on defense. And then it's your bench unit at the end of the third quarter and into the fourth that are really carrying them until you're able to bring back in LaVine and Vooch with 7 minutes left in the game. So just kind of a fascinating, thing to watch for the Bulls. The other thing that was interesting about this game, look, Stacey King was talking about on the broadcast. There's a lot of guys on this roster who are going to want minutes. But when LaVine was out, we saw Taylor Horton-Tucker become kind of a fixture in the rotation. He did not play at all tonight. Tonight, it was Javon Carter who comes in the second quarter. Surprise. Airballs his first three. Tough look. But then again, in the third and the fourth quarter, he's out there to kind of be the nuisance, the guy who's following and pushing Trae Young. When you need someone to be that clamp defender, before Ayo can get back into the game, we saw Javon Carter be used in that role tonight. So that's another thing to kind of keep an eye on going forward is, are we going to see him have a more important role for a team that really struggles at times defensively? Like, could Carter be one of those answer pieces for Billy Donovan in this rotation? But a good win for the Bulls tonight, 125-113, ending the 4-game losing streak, getting their first win of November and moving back to 4-6 on this very, very young season. And if you missed that stat, just want to read it again because it is incredible that with the guys that have played for the Chicago Bulls since 1978, that Nikola Vucevic is the first Bulls player to have 200 points and 100 rebounds in the first 10 games of a season. So a lights-out performance from Vooch so far through 10 games, and Billy Donovan that gets this team a win tonight. And I thought he did a good job coaching. We'll talk about what happened in this game because it is very clearly a tale of two halves for the Chicago Bulls. What the first half looked like and what the second half looked like, specifically on defense. And as good as the second half was, we got to talk about what happened in the first half because it's just not acceptable. It's not good enough basketball. And I think that I feel pretty confident telling you that they would be saying the same thing. It is the Locked On Bulls postcast here on the Locked On Sports Chicago YouTube channel. My name's Joe George. Find me on Twitter at JoeGeorge92. Let's talk about those defenses next here on the Locked On Bulls postcast. All right, PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 player for 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Your game all season long runs on PrizePicks. One of my favorite features that they have right now and will have going forward is that PrizePicks now offers Venmo for quick and easy deposits and withdrawals into your account this sports season. So just another easy way to get into PrizePicks and to get in on the action. If you sign up today, you get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win that lineup to receive the $50 bonus. It's absolutely guaranteed. So win or lose, sign up today, $50 when you win, when you play $5. So, I mean, look, that's a great deal. And look, there's a lot of fun ones you can do with the Bulls right now. You can, every single night, I'm looking at, points and rebounds and assists, more or less for Nikola Vucevic, what Zach LaVine, where he's at with points on the night. So I'm always looking at what the Bulls are doing on PrizePicks and seeing what kind of lineup I can put together as I'm watching a Bulls game. It makes the game a little more fun when you've got a PrizePicks lineup going on as well. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game.
Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. You missed out on the $250, but now they got the $150 for you. That still helps you out quite a lot. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. I've been telling you guys how important that is of a tool to get all the information you need on the same page where you place your bets. It just streamlines that whole process. So go to FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com. You get started with $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you win your first $5 bet. When you win your first $5 bet, that's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
Such a clear story that this game is a clear, tale of two halves for the Bulls. They look like totally different teams in the first half and the second half defensively. And look, in the second half, the Hawks only scored 43 points. All the mistakes, and this is where I think you have to give Billy Donovan, because we will pick on them at times. You have to give Billy Donovan credit, his staff credit for adjusting and getting these guys to adjust. But you have to give the players credit, of course, as well, because there were some things that they were doing very wrong early in this game that are fixable. And that's why the Bulls are, at times, I don't quite understand what's happening on defense, because it's not things that are, they're not just getting crushed. They're not playing the Mavericks every single night like we saw. Right? It's not Kyrie and Klay Thompson and Luka Doncic just going off and taking over for the Mavs in a game. In a night like tonight, you're allowing way too much easy stuff to guys who are not good basketball players, to be honest, or at least not good on offense. They're defensive-minded guys, and they're dominating the Bulls. The one tonight was Clint Capella. Clint Capella had 16 points in the first half. I think he ended up with just under 20, so I don't think he scored much in the second half. But the Bulls have given up a lot of points in the paint this season, but to allow a guy like Clint Capella to have that much of an impact on this game is way too much. Now, you can point out, and I think it's fair, the free throw disparity in the first half versus the second half. The Atlanta Hawks had way more free throws than the Bulls. They were getting to the line constantly. Felt like the Bulls were getting absolutely no calls on stuff that did really seem obvious in this game, and just to get nothing out of it. But then that's part of the reason why you fall behind. But look, you gave up 82 points combined in the fourth quarter of the Mavs game and the first quarter of tonight's game versus the Atlanta Hawks. You gave up 70 points in the first half versus the Atlanta Hawks. How you go from giving up 70 to 43, some of that, of course, is a little bit of luck and a lot of missed shots, as we were talking about there at the end of that last segment with Trae Young just not hitting anything. But it's just not a good basketball team. So to allow, like I said, Capella and just all these other guys, Jalen Johnson, to have a big night, it's just not going to cut it. And there was a couple points of defensive things that stood out to me in this game. The first one, something that look, when we're watching games, we're all a little bit everywhere, so I'm watching it, but I'm really always listening to the broadcast. And early in the game, this might have been the third possession of the game for the offense. There's a three that goes up and it bricks and Stacey King immediately calls them out for pouting because the Bulls play no defense. They have no effort on running back down the court, and the Atlanta Hawks get an easy bucket. So that's something that we have noticed this season, that when they're taking shots and when they're not going in, the Bulls defense is way too dramatically affected by that. And that's another thing that in tonight's game in the first half doesn't have to be a true story. It doesn't have to be the way you play basketball. That is a effort thing. That is an attitude thing that the Bulls need to adjust. So you can't just go down there and jack up threes and then not pay attention to what's happening on you. Another thing they pointed out on the broadcast, because we don't watch the Atlanta Hawks on a regular basis, we watch the Bulls, that this is a team that's going to cut aggressively to the hoop. And they did that a lot in the first half. And what we saw from the Bulls was a lot of the same issues that we've seen at times this season, but it was really bad, I thought, in the first half of this game, where there are very clear backdoor cuts that they're not paying attention to guys. The rotations are not super clean. And that, that 1-3 we just pointed out where Stacey King talked about the pouting, they're also just not getting back on defense. Like they're just not running down the court against a very young athletic basketball team. So they're just letting things happen. They just don't need to. So I give them a lot of credit for adjusting in the second half and figuring this thing out and getting back on track, because you don't need to see this low level of defense from the Chicago Bulls on a consistent basis. They can be an okay defensive team, right? Like we know they're not going to be, an elite defensive team pulling out some 90s magic and going toe-to-toe with guys. But asking a team to not give up 70 points and a half, asking a team to, not get down 18 in the first half, or maybe it was in the third quarter when that was even there, but to get down 18 points, it's too much. And it's why they're only 4-6 on the season. And the fact is that you've got two 20-point comebacks and an 18-point comeback. Like this is just, I know it's the style of play that they're going with, and it's the reason why they're down big, and it's the reason why they're coming back in these games, because they want all these threes. That's fine. If that's how you want to play, like that, that's your call, and it can really work for the Bulls. That's super clear that they can be effective with this up and down, tons of three-pointers style in a basketball game. But the defense doesn't have to follow the same pattern of just letting the other team score at will, and they have to get a better defensive presence. Like this is where, if you want to, go at, say Vooch is not what you need him to be, and you can say, well, how does Clint Capella have 16 points in the first half? Well, that's mostly Vooch's guy. Like between him and Patrick Williams, they just leave a lot to be desired on the defensive end of the court. And that's what we saw in the first half. So tough first half for the Bulls. 70 points is just unbelievable to give up that much. But like I said, to get 43, only give up 43, and to be a big reason why you win this game, and really the defense, I think you have to give them the end of the game there, where they run away with this thing and end up winning 125-113. That's really where we saw the Bulls play their best defense of the game, because they were running the ball quickly and, getting nice transition buckets. Like there was the one with the Io dunk that was an and one, where it was 3 passes. The ball never touches the ground. It was great outlet passing and moving down the court. So good win for the Bulls. Like, please stop with whatever's happening in the first half. I think it's funny how they point out on the broadcast, like, hey, Billy Donovan needs to tell them they're down by 25 to start the game. They just need to find a way to start playing like they're down by 20 and that they're down by 18, and that they need to play better defense at the start of the game. And if they do, that's why this Bulls team, like we go back to the first game of the season when they told us, from the players that they thought they could be a better basketball team than what the Vegas number said and what the media said and what some of the fans are thinking. It's because of what they did in the second half. The first half team is what the numbers say. The second half team is what the players say of why we could be optimistic about the Chicago Bulls this season. 4-6, long way to go, but nice to get back into the win column for the first time in November and to end a 4-game losing streak in Zach LaVine's return. Let's talk about that return. A lot of good from Zach LaVine. One thing that is concerning, to say the least, about Zach LaVine, that something I just noticed in this game that I think we're going to have to keep an eye on, because we just saw how bad it is without him on the court. That without him, the Bulls are going to be a struggle fest to watch and to just win basketball games this season. We'll do that next year. My name is Joe George. You're listening to the Locked On Bulls postcast here on the Locked On Sports Chicago YouTube channel. Even though I wear underwear every day, I have not switched up the type of underwear I bought since college. For those who haven't heard, Skims now offers men's underwear, and I'm here to tell you it's absolutely worth the hype. Look, I'm a dad. We know as you become a dad, if you are one, or as one day you become one, things become a little stressful. You don't be changing up your underwear all the time. I was always partial to something simple and classic when it came to my underwear, so I was never sure when it was time to replace my old pairs with something new. Then I tried Skims Cotton 3 boxer briefs, and it's everything I loved about my classic boxer briefs. But honestly, it's better. They're the perfect weight, the perfect classic cotton feel, and the design is nice and simple how I like it. From now on, this dad is going to Skims. Shop SKIMS Mens at skims.com. Let them know we sent you. After you place your order, select podcasts in the survey, select our show and the drop-down menu that follows. And if you're looking for the perfect gifts for the whole family, Skims just launched their biggest holiday shop ever, also available at skims.com. All right, let's talk about Zach LaVine in this game. So he returns from the injury, the right abductor strain that he had that kept him out for a couple games there. Obviously, it was not good basketball while he was out, so it was very desperate that you needed him to get back as soon as possible. So I want to start with the point of concern that I have from Zach LaVine. And now I have not seen any reports on this, just something I noticed that before this injury that he had that kept him out, the other thing that was going on was that there was a shoulder injury that was there, that where he was a couple games, I think it was like the game before he ended up missing time, he's pulling at it, it's clearly hurt and bothering him. And in this game, I just noticed him a couple times reaching up and touching that left shoulder. And so it's just something I think we need to keep an eye on, because without him, his team is hopeless. Hopeless is probably the only word to put it. Even though Vooch has been great this season and has been your best player, without Zach LaVine, it would be a very, very long season. So that's one thing I didn't love seeing in this game, just seeing him constantly kind of tugging at that shoulder. And I don't know if it was a confidence thing, but which is something to keep an eye on with him. But from the stuff we actually know about, not the speculation that I'm putting out there. Once again, speculation. I want to make that clear. Nothing yet from the team or any actual reporters out there. But Zach LaVine goes 7 for 12 from the field, 1 for 5 from the three-point line, so not a great night from there. But 7 assists and gets 18 points. You can see in this game how important he is, though. Because the three-point shooting for him, we know it comes and goes, but more often than not, it's pretty good. But in the fourth quarter, when he comes in early in the game, that's really where we're seeing the best Zach LaVine stretches. And even just to start this game, this is where, even though they got down early, what you want to see from the Bulls, I think is very clear to me, that at the start of a game, you want Zach LaVine and Nikola Vucevic to be the center point of the offense. They will open up everything else for Kobe White or Patrick Williams. And what we saw in this game versus the Atlanta Hawks is that Vooch and LaVine had 14 of the first 18 points in this game. That's huge. That's what you need. Maybe not that much, but give me 10 of 18, of the first 18 points every game, 50%, if you will, in the first quarter of while they're out there before subs start coming in, before they get subbed out from the first time. The attacking style of LaVine and Vooch is really what just set the Bulls up for success, I think, at the end of the game, but early on, even though your offense didn't follow suit, and your defense, obviously, we just discussed, really struggled in the first half, just having LaVine and Vooch be that efficient and that good early on is something we just need to see more consistently. It's been the thing we've harped on the most this season, that they don't go to Vooch enough. They don't go to LaVine enough early. And just to see LaVine come back in and to be this actively involved in the offense immediately. Now then, him and Vooch kind of disappear for a while, which is always frustrating, that even when they're on the court, they don't immediately come back in and start trying to feed them the basketball once again. But at least at the start of this game tonight, that's a big takeaway. And then just for Zach LaVine to come out the game, 18 points, be really efficient from the field, with the exception of the 3-point line. a very positive development for the Bulls just to get him back on the court because, like I just said, like this team, it's going to go as far as Zach LaVine and Nikola Vucevic can take them this year. If you still have play-in hopes or playoff hopes, at this point in the season, as the East starts off in a very weird way, you do need wins like this when you play the Atlanta Hawks. A lot of fun games coming up. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel here for Locked On Sports Chicago. If you are a Notre Dame fan, you're listening to this live at least. Just a reminder, we'll go live as soon as the Notre Dame game ends tonight as well. After every single Bears game, so Sunday after the Patriots game, we will go live every single Bulls game, a 30-minute postcast reacting to what is going on with your Chicago teams. As well, we'll pick up the Cubs as baseball season gets back around. Hit that subscribe button. If you haven't followed the audio channel yet, make sure you go do that. Locked On Bulls, wherever you get your podcasts, you can find them there as well. We dropped the audio right away as well. So if you're listening on a Saturday night, thank you. But if you want to listen on Sunday morning because you're out with your friends, make sure you hit that subscribe button on audio, and you can always watch the video later as well. So we will talk to you for the next Bulls game and for the next Notre Dame and Bears game as well. My name's Joe George. Find me on Twitter at JoeGeorge92. The Bulls, wrong teams there. The Bulls win 125-113 over the Atlanta Hawks, ending their 4-game losing streak and winning their first game in November this season. We'll talk to you next time. Peace.